We stand out from every other animal on this planet. And there's this crazy, wild war of biology.
The author of Genesis is making these points that are actually rebutting something like the origin stories of the surrounding cultures.
Anything left to itself without some kind of intelligence behind it will devolve into chaos.
First, we're going to play a short clip from the Wes Huff interview where Joe asked the questions, why are humans different than everything else in the universe? And then a podcast released yesterday in his conversation between Mel Gibson, he basically reiterates a version of the same question. What are humans? Why are we different? Then at the end of this video, I have a few amazing quotes for you guys from a book that we're reading right now in the book club inside of the Wisdom Society called Mere Humanity that we just happen to be reading right now that ties all of this together so perfectly, as if by design. So with that being said, let us begin.
The search for our origins is one of the most human endeavors. One of the most, because to know that we are particularly unique. We're so different. We stand out from every other animal on this planet. And there's this crazy, wild war of biology where life is just eating life all around us. And we just got to some crazy place that far beyond any other creature that's on this planet.
Yeah.
And we did it in a bunch of different ways. We did it in a bunch of different ways all over the place with different scribbles and different icons and different gods and different things. And we're all wondering, like, which one, where did it start? What was the origin of all this? Like, what was the need to write these things down? What purpose did it serve to have these myths and legends and stories? Like, was it just to keep society together, or was it to retell a very important story that was a very unique thing that happened at the dawn of time?
And that's why you see, I mean, the literary comparison of ancient Near Eastern origin stories is like a really interesting thing to do, because when you look at something like the Enuma Elish, which was the Babylonian creation story, and then you look at something like Genesis chapter 1, there are obvious crossovers with, like I said before, these ancient Near Eastern conventions. But then you can see that the author of Genesis is making these points that are actually rebutting something like the origin stories of the surrounding cultures.
Genesis chapter 1 has been called a polemic against other ancient Near Eastern cosmology accounts, meaning that the way that it's described is intentional and purposefully, like he said, rebutting those other stories.
Matter is like eternal, and the gods come out of the created world, and that there's this narrative of the battle that takes place where some gods fight against other gods, and the world around us that we see and like human beings are the end result of this battle. And so they would read this on every Babylonian New Year. And one of the main themes was basically that, like, it's all chance. It's all a random mistake. You were created without purpose and intention because Tiamat gets destroyed. And she's the god that, you come from. And then you read Genesis chapter 1 and it says, in the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. And he makes it good. And there's this idea that, like, that's countercultural in the idea that the Babylonians did not think that the world was good. And that, like, at the end of every refrain, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, and then it's very good at the end. And that humanity in particular is created in the image of God. Like, that's a very, not just like kings, which a lot of ancient Near Eastern cultures believed that kings were created in the image of God, but that humanity in general is created in the image of God. And this idea of the imago Dei, that that's why you're different. Like, why are you different from all the animals?
Right.
Because you're given something that exemplifies of a unique quality. And then the ancient Near Eastern cultures that believe that, the planets are gods and that the sea is a god. And then at Genesis chapter 1 looks at that and it kind of subverts the expectations of the day in getting to this ultimate question of, why are we here? What are we supposed to do while we're here, and how do we get out of here? And it says that, no, there's purpose, there's meaning, there's intention. And actually, a lot of the things that you worship, it's pretty stupid because God created them.
Okay, so like I said, I think Wes's answer here gives Joe something real to chew on. And I think that this question remains at the top of his mind because a few days later, he asks a version of this question, basically, again, to Mel Gibson. And here's what that sounded like.
I don't think I was some kind of, like, legless thing that crawled out of the ocean. I don't think I came from that. I think I was created.
Do you think other things were legless things that came out of the ocean? Do you think like multi-celled organisms came out of single-celled organisms, and there was some sort of a natural selection and random mutation, and it led to everything else but us?
Sure, look at gain of function.
Right.
You can make stuff happen. And I'm sure stuff did happen. But I think it's all part of creation. I think it's all ordered. I think anything left to itself without some kind of intelligence behind it will devolve into chaos. And so that there has to be some big intelligence that orchestrates everything. Not that we don't have chaos in the world, but I think that's our own making.
But what do you think separates us from all the other creatures?
Wow. I think we have a soul. We're created with a soul. And, I went to a restaurant last night. It was a steakhouse in Austin. And it was interesting because all the pictures on the wall are pictures of animals that look resentful, like cows and steers staring at you, looking angry as you rip into a steak. But I just believe we are higher than those creatures because we have a soul, we have an intellect above theirs, and we aspire to higher things. We have aspirations.
Right.
And this is part of why people drink and smoke and do dope and all this kind of stuff, is because they're looking for a spiritual experience. They're looking for, like they actually call alcohol spirits. I mean,
right.
They're looking for something higher. And I think we all have that yearning in that we want to be happy, and we want to be at peace, and we want everything to be hunky-dory. So there's this yearning inbuilt in all of us for that, to aspire to something greater. And that's why we're inspired by stories.
What is man, and what is the purpose of life on this earth? C.S. Lewis wisely observed that, quote, "The first qualification for judging any piece of workmanship, from a corkscrew to a cathedral, is to know what it is intended to do, and how it is meant to be used. In the case of mankind, this is especially true, for nothing else can be properly decided until we know the answer. Metaphysics, what is real, epistemology, how can we know, and how do we know that we know it, and ethics, what is good, are all affected, for it is we human beings who exist, who ask, and who choose. While other beings may also do these things, we have direct access to what they are like from the inside only as we do them ourselves. Hence, whatever concept of reality we have must be one that includes us. Any account of knowing that we accept must take into account the nature of the one attempting to know." Hang with me here. And by definition, of the good that guides us must be able to define what is good for precisely such beings as we discover ourselves to be, or it will be irrelevant to us. Here it is. The traffic between ourselves and these questions runs both ways. If we knew independently that only matter existed, for example, we would have to describe ourselves in purely materialistic terms. Everything we are, feel, know, and do would have to be completely describable in terms of atoms in motion. On the other hand, if we experience ourselves in ways that appear to transcend the purely physical, this would seem to tell us some kind of metaphysical realm must be true. So far, so good. But what if we seem to get one kind of answer when looking inward subjectively, and another when we are trying to look outward with objectivity? In other words, what if we can't honestly reduce ourselves, as we know from the inside, to nothing more than atoms in motion, but when we look at our universe, that is all that we can objectively detect? It could be argued that this is the precise predicament that we find ourselves in. As Marion Montgomery, summarizing Gilson, puts it, quote, "We know and know that life and meaning have real existence, though science cannot substantiate that reality because the reality at issue lies in a dimension of immateriality." We're almost there. No one feels his or herself to be nothing but atoms unless he or she has already been influenced by a dogmatic materialism. Yet even materialists will try to convince you that materialism is true. which is inconsistent with their own position. For how can one arrangement of atoms ultimately produce by chance be more true than another arrangement equally produced by chance? In other words, how can the materialist belief in materialism, described as the physical state of his brain, which, if he's right, is all that it can be more true than the dualist, he's calling dualist as in people who believe in something more than matter, opinion, that there exists something else besides matter? Who stands outside of both physical states to judge between them? Last few sentences. For in the materialist view, the person's opinion is also a physical brain state ultimately produced not by reason, but by the chance operations of the laws of physics. Giving chance the fancy scientific sounding title evolution really changes nothing. We must insist on asking the question of who is the judge between these beliefs, or more accurately, what is the judge? Another arrangement of atoms, also inexorably produced by the impersonal workings out of the laws of physics and chemistry? This leads us nowhere. Last sentence. Whatever the materialists say, they all act as if they thought they were more than chance collection of atoms, whenever, ironically, they make truth claims for materialism. This dilemma is an inescapable datum that I have tried to summarize thus. And then he goes on here. I don't know if you guys want to stick around for this whole thing, but he basically goes on here. I guess I'll read this one last sentence. He says, atoms in motion, in other words, simply cannot account for the fact that we know, perceive, and understand atoms in motion. They cannot even account for the fact that some of us think we are just atoms in motion, nor can they settle the disagreement between those who think so and the rest of us. They would have to be engaging in some rather peculiar motions were they to be able to do so. And it goes on building out this case that essentially, and I think of the way that John Lennox put this, he says, to shoot yourself in the foot in an argument is a bad idea, but to shoot yourself in the head, in other words, to actually take away the reasoning capability itself that you are saying that humans have, now that's a lethal blow. And he's basically saying that materialists have not only shot themselves in the foot in the argument, but actually shot themselves in the very head. And so if you guys, like I said, if you guys like this type of conversation, if you guys like this type of content, Donald T. Williams is an awesome guy, the author of this book, and he actually will be joining us in February, early February, inside the Wisdom Society in a Q&A where we will discuss all of this with him. So maybe you disagree. Maybe you want to combat Dr. Williams. Maybe you have a different opinion. That's fine. You're also totally welcome. There's a lot of, I would say an increasing number of different perspectives inside the Wisdom Society, but all are welcome there. The link is in the description for that. And I appreciate you guys watching this video. I'm so appreciative, speaking of appreciation, of Joe Rogan's journey and the type of guests that he's been having the past couple days, couple weeks. And so I think the whole thing is hopefully, if not a cultural turn, I don't want to overstate anything, but at least a significant marked moment in the cultural conversation as he's asking questions that I think are inherent inside of philosophical thought, and that if you continue asking these questions, if you follow this path all the way to its end, you will find yourself at that wonderful place where the shadow of the cross rests on an empty tomb where all questions can be answerable. So with that, I will leave you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.